Hello and welcome. For those new to the channel, my name is Shalom Bar Aretz. I'm a major in the IDF Reserves. I have degrees in political science, international relations, sociology. I do web lectures and consultancy. And I also have this new YouTube channel where I discuss some of the different issues of the day. And today, it being the 16th of June, 2025, the issue of the day are the war between Israel and Iran. And this is a personal issue. I've spent many of the last days in what's called a safe room, right, in my house. And yeah, this war is mainly fought in the air, so I'm not directly involved in the Iranian part of it. So I can feel free to do my own comments on the matter because I know what the public knows. Besides for, my own insight into how the Israeli system works. Today, I'm going to be watching a video by an enemy. In all sense, right? So I would say the world is very much an interesting place where there are quite a few different camps. It's I'm I'm very much not only supporting Israel but like part of Israel, and then there's people who are like pro-Israel but they're not Israeli. Then there's people who are neutral, not really anything. And then you would have someone like the left wing in America, in Europe, where for some reason there's this weird left wing Hamas alliance, and then you get to far beyond that. You get to the axis of resistance, right? Where they would view the axis of resistance as like the good guys, and Iran are the good guys, and Israel is the bad guy to the fullest extent possible. And here I bring you a video from a channel called Syriana Analysis, where he is the bad guy, right? He is super pro-Iranian, pro-axis of resistance. He actually doesn't think that he's pro-Iranian because he will actually talk about Iran doing things not great when they are not against Israel enough, right? So he's further out there than the Ayatollah. So that's this channel, okay? And you'll see that very quickly. And so that's him and that's his guests. And I've been watching this channel for a little while. I think it's fascinating. I really think this is a fascinating channel because it's very through a mirror darkly, because he is so far on the other side that it's almost a complete 180 view of the world. Almost to such an extent that a lot of things I agree with him, okay? Because when he's looking at, if you're looking at a line and there's two sides of a line, and if I'm on one side, he's on the complete other side, the center of the line I have issue with, and he also has issue with, right? So he'll be looking at Qatar, which I view as this pro-Hamas, the entity, and he'll be looking at it as this pro-Israeli entity, because for him, Qatar has an American base in it, and it has dealings with America. So if it has dealings with America, it's on the side of Israel, and that's how it is. It's a very black and white view of the world, but from such a far position that the black includes almost everything that isn't, Hamas and further on down. and like everyone else is just like grouped in with Israel. So it's a very interesting position. It's fascinating. He'll have sometimes he'll be on point in its analysis, but it'll be completely like switched around. So like sometimes he'll talk about Israel and he'll talk about what Israel is doing, and I might even agree with him, but like on his side it is, oh my goodness, this is a horrible thing, and on my side it is, oh, this is a good thing, right? So it's very interesting. And this video, they talk about different issues, and I'll be chiming in. It's a long video, so this will take a little while. So thank you for joining me. This, I think, for a lot of people, this will be a very eye-opening video to understand like where things are on the other side. And I hope you enjoy it.
And Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kirk Almasian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming and our weekly show, Cold War 2.0.
Just a word about this guy, right? So he's actually Syrian. He's actually, like, his family comes from Armenia. He's a second generation Syrian who left Syria and now lives in Germany, right? And he was like pro Assad. Pro Assad, in, besides the point, left to Germany. He even talks about how like the German government tried to send him back to Syria while Assad was in power because it was like, look, you're not a refugee if you support the, you know, the people in power there. So that's like, that's him, okay? And he brings on guests which are like, that agree with him. And he'll even think that he brings on like varied guests because he'll bring like the most like radical anarchist left-wing Americans, and like they won't be of the opinion that you just need to like destroy the West or like destroy Israel, or that there is can be nuance, and like his viewers will like attack him for bringing on right-wing people, okay? Like that's why this is fascinating, because it's so far out there.
This is the 9th episode with our dear friend Tarek Chiril Amar. Today is the 13th of June 2025, and I woke up to the news of Israeli bombing of Iran. They have targeted over 300 targets, security targets, nuclear targets, and they have assassinated many senior officials in Iran. I will screen us some of the names of the casualties in Iran so that we know the gravity of the matter. For example, Israel has assassinated the chief of the general staff, commander of the Air Force, commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, commander of the emergency headquarters, commander of the Iranian ground forces, commander of the IRGC Navy, commander of the Quds Force, who was the successor to Qasem Soleimani, commander of the Basij forces, commander of the Iranian Navy and of the regular army, and commander of the Army Ground Forces, commander of the Army Air Force. And this is not the full list yet.
So like understand, like when he's reading out that list, like he is like super sad, right? Where I'm like, wow, we really got all of these evil people. So yeah.
Tarek, I think you also woke up today to this devastating news, to this escalation. Were you surprised? Were you shocked by this escalation by Israel against Iran? Do you see it as an escalation, or do you see it as an imminent Israeli attack to curb any possible Iranian nuclear ambitions in the region?
So, thank you. Regarding your first question, you know, it's what you could almost call the Israel effect, right? Where you're not surprised, but you're very shocked.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you live in the same world with Israel, when you have the misfortune of inhabiting the same planet with this monster society and this monster state.
The misfortune to live on the same planet with this monstrous society. Like it's so crazy, okay? Like I'm like I'm sorry that I have a smile on my face hearing this like completely disgusting, like like talking point, but like it's fascinating because it's the mask is off, right? There is no mask. They don't think there should be a mask. They think that they are completely in the right to thinking that this is like my country should be wiped off the face of the map, right? So no one would have the misfortune to live on the same planet as me. Like that's how crazy it is.
I will say it, then you expect the very worst all the time. So you're not strictly speaking surprised, but you are also still shocked because it's still the very worst when they actually do it, right? This is the state that has been conducting a live stream genocide now for almost, we are getting close to 2 years.
So if you're interested, I have a whole video about why it is not a genocide at all. But of course, like this is in the live stream genocide. It's such a catchy little thing where look how evil this people are doing a live stream genocide, ignoring all other factors and what a genocide even is.
And they're showing no signs of letting up. And this is only the peak. We all know that this is only peak Israeli performance. Below that peak, there are so many other crimes, right? So the fact that they have started this attack on Iran, which isn't over yet, obviously, is immensely shocking, but it's not surprising. Let me say one thing, right? Because you mentioned the term imminent. The Israelis, of course, and I know you probably see this the same way, Kavort, the Israelis, of course, claim that this attack was what they call a preemptive strike. And maybe we should say this for some of our viewers. Many will know it, but let's lay it out. According to international law as it stands, there is no option of carrying out a preventative war. That's forbidden. You can never carry out
I'll let him finish and then we'll break this down.
It's always a crime. But there is, under certain extremely narrowly defined circumstances, an option to carry out what's called a preemptive strike.
Wait, so look, like, first of all, like, we called it a preventive strike, and he's doing like this legalistic like thing where like maybe if I can get like a gotcha that in terms of a narrow legal term for what would be called a justified, an internationally justified preemptive strike, then we got them in a lie, right? Which is like this, twisting of it. Because first of all, a preemptive strike can be something which is not just in its narrow legalistic terms. And that's first of all, right? The premise is silly. Because it's trying to saying that like, oh, it doesn't fit a narrow like of a legal preemptive strike, so it's not a preemptive strike, so therefore they're lying. That's one. Two, we are in a state of war with Iran for the last 2 years, right? Proxies have like attacked us, and there was direct firing and retaliations between Iran and Israel last year, which have not been closed, right? This state of war has existed between Israel and Iran for the last 2 years, 1 year at least. And so in the context of a state of war, doing a strike on specific military targets so they don't use those specific military capabilities, i.e. nuclear capabilities, is it's a completely different thing. You're not even looking into a prospective strike what is, because you're already in a state of war. So when you're already in a state of war, strikes happen. That this strike was to prevent a certain part of their capabilities doesn't avoid the fact that a state of war already exists.
A much more narrow concept. However, what Israel has done does not fall under these criteria. So this is another blatant Israeli lie. It is completely absurd, and whoever believes that wants to believe it or knows nothing about international law.
So
Because the key criterion for justifying a preemptive strike as legal, allowed, permitted, is that you have to be able to show that the other, your opponent, was really just about to strike you.
So here he's saying that like a preventive strike in a strict legalistic international terms, when you're not in a state of war, would be only when they are in the act of firing upon you. Okay? Like, so first of all, I don't think this is correct, but even if it is, again, we were already in a state of war. It's not bringing into a state of war a new, group. It is continuing a state of war which has already existed, including because of direct Iranian attacks on Israel. Not only by its proxies, but by Iran itself last year. So, it's saying that like, oh, they are lying. So it's like I have you on a gotcha because you're saying it was a preventive strike, but a preventive strike in this, it's a ridiculous argument, right? And like, oh, it's like this bald-faced lie, right? Like it's ridiculous.
Just like Israel was doing like we watched this footage of the video, the fighter jets were departing, which means Iran had
If
the right
Iran
to
had
preemptively
struck
strike.
at that moment, that would have been a very clear case of a justified preemptive strike. Exactly. And Kevork, I'm just
So you
writing
have to
an
wait
article
until
about
like
this,
everything
and
is
that's
like
one
going
of the
out.
point I make in it. If anybody here, if any state had the right, perhaps, to a preemptive strike, it was Iran, not Israel. And you can go even further than the fighter jets, because Israel is the side that for months has been telling Iran, we are going to come, we are going to come, we are going to attack you, right? So if you are Iran, if you're in Tehran, you could take this and say, this is excellent evidence that an attack is actually imminent. They're telling us.
So, right, that would constitute a preemptive strike, even though this contradicts what he said before, that it has to be like right when it's being launched. So put that on the side. But, right, but Iran always saying like we will destroy Israel wouldn't constitute a preventive strike, right? Like it, and also it's like such semantics. Like Israel said that they were going to attack Iran specifically to prevent its nuclear arms, and Iran was saying that they were going to attack Israel to destroy it. Sure, and they're going to argue semantics about what would be considered, and then, oh, so Iran can strike Israel to destroy it, but Israel can't strike Iran. So, like, it's an obvious double standard. I don't have to go into it that much, but it's like this is the world they live in.
Right? So it is exactly the other way around. If any state under international law had a right to strike first in a so-called preemptive strike, then it was actually Iran. But Iran didn't do that.
Yeah.
What Israel has done is clear aggression. It is actually a war of aggression, yet another one. It's absolutely criminal. There's no doubt about this. And all the talk about Iran's nuclear capacities, whether true or untrue or massively exaggerated, as always with Israel, right, is irrelevant. Because even if another...
And so it's all irrelevant, right? So, like, you can have a nuclear weapon, and then when you're saying to destroy us, and that's just irrelevant. Okay? Like,
state is building nuclear weapons, that doesn't give you the right to simply attack them. It may give you the right to negotiate with them, to put sanctions on them, you can't simply attack. This is not within your rights. You may have such a right at the moment when the other state opens the silos of its ICBM nuclear rockets, and you have all sorts of other evidence that they're about to launch them. Maybe then.
so
But simply
what he's saying is that, like, it's this horrible thing that Israel did because they did not wait for Iran to have actual nuclear warheads on ICBMs launching at that moment. Wait. Only as they are launching, only then maybe Israel can attack Iran, which is it's completely bonkers, right? The consequences of what he is saying is that you actually need to accept a nuclear holocaust on your country, and only when that has started, you might be able to maybe defend yourself. Okay? And until that time, just sit and stay put. You know, like no one could agree with this.
Saying, oh, these guys have a nuclear program where they say it's peaceful, but we don't believe it, right? We feel threatened is not a reason, holds up to nothing. It's the usual Israeli play. It's brutal lies.
I mean, it like they have time and time again said that they will destroy us. Okay? Oh, how did you get the idea they want to destroy us? Well, they've been saying it. Okay? They've been saying it, and they've been taking active steps for this to happen. We are now in almost 2 years of a war where their proxies have been trying to do this. So, like,
combined with brutal aggression.
Tarek, I would just make a disclaimer, and that is I am 100% on the side of international law, which means I truly believe that international law is essential and important and vital for peaceful coexistence among nations.
Except for if it is like a terrorist attack on Israel, except for if it is actions against the West, except for when it is an action taken by like Syria's Assad against its own people that breaks international law, except for all the times where it is not convenient for him, he supports international law.
And for civilized world. However, I'm also not naive to believe there is international law, right? Like there is international law for the subjugated, for those who have to be subjugated, for those who have to be dominated, but for the colonial powers, what is international law basically? Like we're talking about international law like it is sacred, something sacred, which is not.
I agree with you. I'm sorry. I put this in a misunderstandable manner. I only talked about international law so much because the Israelis are using it again for propaganda, right? Yes. They're abusing it. But I absolutely agree with your point.
So he agrees with the point that he doesn't agree with international law, right? So he's saying, oh no, Israel might have this international law claim, so I don't agree with international law. Or like I'm going to prove through a narrow definition, right? It's this whole thing is they're using international law when it suits them, and they're not using it when it doesn't suit them. Now you can say Israel does the same. Well, Israel far more closely tracks international law, and I believe we are fully in our rights under international law, especially after sanctions and different things on Iran, that you can get rid of a nuclear program which the entire world and the UN Security Council has condemned over and over again. But besides the case, you have the basic ability to defend yourself. And that basic ability to defend yourself is part of international law and would supersede it if it wasn't. You know what I'm saying? Where you need your basic ability to act in self-defense as a sovereign country is a basic part of international law. And so you could quibble about what is self-defense and what is a preemptive strike and what is this and what is that, but understand that we are also in the middle of a war with Iran. And so it was a preemptive strike in terms of their capabilities, but not in terms of opening a new war. And that's, it's international law is good when it's convenient, but when it's not convenient, then it is because that it is being used against the subjugated and all the people who I agree with. That's what they're saying.
that unfortunately it would be very important that international law would work, that it would be taken seriously by almost everyone all the time. But the opposite is the case. I agree with you. In the real world, international law does not constrain the West at all. The
Yes.
West and Israel and any client of the West can do whatever they like. We have seen this very clearly now. Genocide is the test case. If genocide doesn't trigger the right legal
Again,
and
not a
actual
genocide.
responses beyond the legal, what follows from that, then you know international law is not functioning. And we do live in a world, I totally agree with you, in which international law is not functioning. It should, but it's not. And the ones to blame for that is it's not Putin. I'm going to say it very clearly. It's not Putin. It's not China. It's not Iran. It's not even North Korea.
It's
It's the
not the
West.
people they
It's the
agree
West.
with, it's the
We,
West.
the West, have destroyed international law as a real thing. We've done it together and for the benefit of Israel, among other things, so that Israel can conduct any war of aggression, any international
So because Israel follows international law, and I do not like Israel, this must be that international law has been twisted in order to suit Israel, right?
terrorism it likes, and also any genocide it likes. That's why we have shredded international law, among other things.
I will bring some of the statements of Western officials and ministries of foreign affairs later during this conversation with you, because one of them has made a crazy statement, and this came from Germany, unfortunately.
Yes, of course.
However,
Unfortunately, Germany, because he lives in Germany and probably he's like also in Germany, and yeah, you know, these are the people who are living in Europe right now.
however, before we go there, there was I will show you a few things, Tariq, so we can have this conversation. There were articles like this, many of them in the past few weeks.
Yeah.
The main argument is there is a split within the MAGA movement, and Trump is against the war on Iran, and that he doesn't want it, and there is a rift with Netanyahu. However, today, as the strikes started against Iran, we got a different type of reports. For example, the Times of Israel, they say that report: U.S. helped lull Iran into belief no attack is imminent. The U.S. participated in a massive campaign to lull Iran into thinking an attack was not going to happen immediately, and this is according to Channel 12 report. Then we have Donald Trump himself.
So like here, like maybe, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of speculation on this from all sides. I think they can both be true. You can both have a split within the leadership of the Republican Party, and also a utilization of that split, right? Where like if the split's already exists, we can like exploit it in order to, you know, lull Iran into thinking that the attack isn't imminent, which like they're looking at as a bad thing, and I would look at it as a good thing. Use the tools at hand, right? Like, you know, this isn't anything new. This is like Sun Tzu.
Comes and he made a statement. He says, he told this to ABC News on Friday, that Israel's military strikes on Iran was, quote, excellent, adding, quote, we gave the Iranians an opportunity. They didn't take advantage. They took a very hard hit, and there is more to come. When asked regarding any U.S. role in the attack on Iran, Trump said, I don't want to respond to that. One more. Those are all important reports, all coming in the same context. This is from Axios.
So like sure. So he's looking at it like that. Trump has said for the last while that either it'll be the easy way or the hard way, right? Like you can go like the nice way or the not nice way in Trump's way of speaking. And this has been clear warnings to Iran for a while. So also it's like, oh, they were clearly warning Iran, but also it was like, you know, this out of the blue attack. And like it's like both. It's like you're trying to have your cake and eat it too, right? There have been like conditions on the table, and it haven't been met. And then there was an Israeli attack. That within that context, they were still able to have the benefit of surprise, like, and then you're because that's the problem, right? If you give like a deadline, and you're not planning on meeting that deadline, then you know when the deadline ends, the attack happens. So if one side is able to like muddy the waters and have the deadline approach, but the other side not know that it will actually be like, you know, the threat would be like being acted upon, then you're still able to use like some sort of like not strategic surprise, but more of like a tactical surprise.
Which I suspect it is a Mossad backed platform. They say they're citing
Anything that isn't directly like anti-Israel in his mind is usually Mossad backed, right? So like again, even like when you get to like left wing, which would be like saying like there's truth on both sides, they'll be like, oh, that's Mossad backed, right? Only something that's like pro Hamas would be like, okay, it's not Mossad backed.
Israeli officials, the operation against Iran was carried out after 8 months of intensive and secret preparations with the green light of the United States, which means those all started before the negotiations started between Iran and the United States. And finally, this is by...
No one's ever like hid the fact that Israel was preparing for a strike on Iran, right? Like this has never been like a secret thing, irrespective of, you know, Trump. I mean, I hope so. Like Israel's been planning a strike on Iran for the last like 20 years at different times under different stages of development and so on and so forth. So like you're always going to be planning it, even if you don't plan on using it, right? So yeah, it's not even an issue. It's not even a point.
Trump himself. Trump says, I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words to just do it. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I told them it would be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told, that the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far, and that Israel has a lot of it, with much more to come, and they know how to use it. Certain Iranian hardliners spoke bravely, but they didn't know that was what was about to happen. They are all dead now, and it will only get worse. There has already been great deaths and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. No more deaths, no more destruction. Just do it before it was too late. God bless you all. So it's multi-layered, right? First, it was the phase of smokescreen, like we're preparing for war, but we give you the impression that we're negotiating. And secondly, it's the threat to escalate it even further, so the Iranians come and accept the terms of the deal.
Yes, yes. Look, it's a whole.
Well, it's like he's saying that it was like the threat and like it's you can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, right? Like if you are negotiating and with the direct threat, not implicit, the actual threat of military action should negotiations fail, of course you would plan those military actions ahead of time. Like anyone who would say otherwise doesn't know how anything works, right? I would say military, but not even the military. Like you can't just like wait until like one phase is completely over to start planning for the next phase. Obviously, you would do both. And so like maybe it was all planned from the beginning. I do believe that if Iran would have come to a deal that was acceptable to the U.S. and Israel, then this wouldn't have happened. Simply because that deal would include, like, dismantling the nuclear program, which is always easier. If they do it, then we do it. But it's ridiculous to like ooh, I gotcha here, they were deceptive. Yes and no. I mean, I think deception is part of everything, and it's not a total like horrible thing, but it was also super, super, super clear and always on the table, as was said, that we were planning on striking and saying we're going to strike for months. That that this was on the table. So it's not like you were just like, oh, it's like, oh, we're all peaceful and now we struck like out of the blue. So like, I don't even know what he's getting at. Like, yes, those are strong statements, and yes, there was some level of different levels of communication of like the carrot and the stick. But the carrot failed, so here comes the stick, right? And maybe like you said that the carrot was still on the table just so you wouldn't know that here comes the stick. But I mean, that's a very low level of deception.
Claim it's Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio, fairly early came out and said the Israeli attack was, he called it unilateral, and he literally said the US was not involved. And of course, we both know, everybody with half a brain knows that Rubio was lying. Obviously, he was lying.
No.
This is a massive Israeli attack. I think 200 planes were in the air at one point. There were sneak drones inside Iran, and we only see a small pieces of this. A lot of things we don't get to see, obviously, right? This does not possibly happen without the US. Of course, the US was involved.
Right. So, like these guys will go back and forth between like Israel being this like all-powerful thing that can do whatever it wants, and obviously it's the U.S. because Israel couldn't do it by itself. And I think it goes without saying that with the threat of nuclear attack on Israel, we spent a lot of time, getting those capabilities ready to go alone without America. I personally think that Rubio wasn't lying. I mean, it all depends on what you mean by U.S. support. I think U.S. support was there in terms of being able to defend from ballistic attacks that would come from Iran. But I think, I'm pretty sure, I mean, like, just from like reports, that the strikes on Iran were taken by Israel. Now, was some American equipment involved? I mean, the planes are made in America. But in terms of using what Israel already has from America to conduct the mission, I think that is clear. In terms in most everything is kind of on the table of what we used, and these are all things that are in our ballpark. And so maybe America will help in the future, maybe not. But I think we've shown that we can go it alone, right? Help is always wanted, but we would have done it without the help. And I think that this was planned, that we would be able to do it without help. But once you go that route and you plan it without help, then any help that arrives only helps, basically. It's not a crutch. You're just using it to limit civilian casualties on your part. Or maybe in the future to disable Iranian nuclear capabilities faster and more effectively. I believe that we would probably be able to do it in the long term without American support, but there are some reports that some bunkers of nuclear sites would need bombs that only America has. So Israel will probably be able to disable it, and we've already shown that we can have people on the ground to do different missions if that's what it takes. Or even, to paralyze the government for so long that different things happen and it no longer becomes a threat. Regime change or so on and so forth. But if American support would be there to just simply destroy that, I don't think Israel would say no, right? And I think that's always something that needs to keep in mind. that I think Israel has really shown the capability to do things alone and to not be dependent. But even if you're not dependent, it would be a fool to not accept help when it is given, right?
It's an incredibly brazen, insulting thing to even try to tell us the opposite. And then, as you have just explained, Trump himself comes out and says, I don't want to answer that question, which is very clear as an answer as well, right? So
Again,
they
there's
were
a difference
involved.
between
I'm absolutely sure. At
defensive and
what level,
offensive.
there are different levels, but they're deeply involved anyhow. You could even argue that the relationship between the US and Israel in terms of military cooperation and intelligence, which is what counts most here, right? Apart from the politics used for the line, for the covering, right? For the distraction. But the relationships in terms of intelligence and military is symbiotic. It's basically one organism, excuse me. It's one organism. So this whole idea that
So like here, it would be like Israel is like one organism, like a part of America. So anything that Israel does would be America's fault. And like the amount of separation between Israel and America would be like 1,000 times more than like the separation between like Hezbollah and Iran, right? Or the Houthis and Iran. Maybe the Houthis are like not 1,000, but only 100. And so like if you extend that argument to the other side, then any attack from Hezbollah onto Israel would be attack of Iran onto Israel, which it is, right? Because their connection is far greater than the connection between America and Israel. But they're like, would be like using this like twisted logic in this like super like not true edge case. We have shown time and time again that we are like independent of America, and I think this is another time where you have showed that. But then, like, they would use that argument to like group everybody together, but they would feel abashed if you would make the argument on the other side.
Israel suddenly is all on its own and like in this purely independent fashion is doing its own little thing. Bullshit.
And he like says it in like this completely like disrespectful way, where Israel has like been on its own and doing its own independent thing for a while. So
Yeah,
bullshit. I've had it. It's enough. We are not going to discuss this. It's a brazen American lie. But it does get interesting when you mention this Axios thing, right? Where essentially I think this is the Israelis crowing and saying, you know what? The opposite is true. We and the US, we deceived them all the time, right?
Yes.
And I think this is closer to the truth. And now imagine, just incidentally, by the way, you read this in Moscow. You're in the Kremlin and you read this and you're like, you know what your first thought is? Minsk 2. Minsk 2. We've seen this game. We've seen this game. They talk about negotiations. They play for time. The West, not the Iranians, not the Russians. They play for time. And while they're playing for time, they're preparing war. Offensive war, not defensive war. Offensive war. That's what they do. And I think this is what we've seen here. The other thing is, of course, look, let's do a thought experiment for 1 second.
So, like, it's, West bad, anyone who's not the West good. That's what it comes down to with his arguments, right? And there's nothing too crazy about it. You don't have to, like, look too deep. If the West, like, plans for something during peacetime, then that's, like, sacrilege. But if Russia was saying, "Oh, this is only a exercise on Ukrainian borders," well, then we're not gonna, that's a different story. It's or like with October 7th, like being attacked, like they were like talking for like so long about like not doing anything, and then they did it, like well that's fine, right? So it's a double standard everywhere.
Let's pretend, just pretend, I know it's absurd, that Trump really didn't want this to happen. Ooh, he didn't want this to happen, and then it happened. How does one explain that after the Israelis do exactly what he allegedly does not want, His only reaction is to say, yeah, go Israel. And by the way, if the Iranians try to defend themselves, I'll help you, Israel.
Yep.
Right? I mean, this makes no sense at all. Anybody who still accepts these American mindfuck games, say it, I hope you have a beep on your show, is an idiot. Is an idiot or brainwashed. This makes no sense at all. This is the US and Israel together.
I mean, like it's such a limited imagination where you could have two different, countries who have the same interest in not have Iran nuclear weapons, a disagreement on the timing, but still agreeing on the broad strokes, right? Like Trump has said time and again that if discussions don't work out, then there'll be a strike. And Israel has said the same thing, but under like a tighter timeline. So to say that like it's impossible that there was a disagreement about the timing of the strike, and then Israel said we're going to do this anyway, and they're like, and then so America didn't really give the go ahead, but understood that this is the timetable that is being moved towards because Israel also has a say in the matter. I mean, like it's a failure of like even the smallest amount of imagination. Do I think it has to be that? I mean, I'm not in the room, so it could be that it was all like hand in hand. But I think it's certainly a plausible way of looking at it.
And they're playing
Definitely.
plausible deniability and all this sort of stuff, but it's for suckers. It's for idiots.
Yes.
If you're still even, this shouldn't even preoccupy anybody anymore.
Yep.
So the more interesting question is, what does this once again mean about the relationship between Israel and US? And of course, you know as well as I do, there are two big schools. One is the US is pulling the strings. Israel is sort of a US aircraft carrier pawn, a US ramming instrument in the Middle East. And others who say, Israel is actually manipulating the US. This is the biggest foreign influence operation in modern history, right? I think actually both is true in a way. I think it goes both ways. And what is so interesting about Trump's reaction
I mean, he
here
doesn't
is
care, right? Both are
Trump
evil.
doesn't
So
even realize that his official lie, the cover narrative he's using, is incredibly embarrassing to the US. Here's an American president who says to you, I said the Israelis should not attack. Then the Israelis attack right in his face, allegedly. And then the American president says, oh, you know what? Now, as you have already attacked, I do everything you wanted. I'm on your side, Israelis. That story in itself is incredibly revealing because Trump thinks it's normal that he displays this degree of dependence, of obedience. The whole American political class is entirely corrupt. And not
It's a
only
clown
are they
show.
because there is no other form of like, and it's also like in their viewpoint, like there's only like a hierarchy, right? You can't have allies who disagree because if someone's top dog, they have to decide. So basically, if they're in their mind, if there is a disagreement between America and Israel, and Israel's side is what happens, then Israel must be on top, right? Because if we thought America was above Israel in this hierarchy and they're telling them what to do, but then Israel does something which in their minds is America would say not to do, then it means that it has to be like this, right? It can't be here's America, who is both a sovereign nation, also a superpower, and here's Israel, who is also a sovereign nation, and also, yes, part of like the Western alliance system, where America is the strongest member. So what America says has weight as an important ally, and what Israel says has weight to America as an important ally in the Middle East. And so where this way of looking at the world, where if one person does something against the wishes of the other, either they are an enemy or they are like directly controlling them. Is this really like weird way of looking at the world, right?
Well, they have no shame left.
No.
They have normalized it so much, they think it's totally normal to let the whole world know we are, here comes the B word, I won't spell it out, we are prostitutes to Israel. We are prostitutes to Israel, and we are proud of it. That's America for you now.
For the audience, and for those who think that Israel would act independently without the consent and the support and coordination with the United States, I'm not talking now to you guys, but for those who believe this, I have a brand new mRNA vaccine to sell to this person and inject it to the arm. I think that would be hitting two birds with one stone. This
Israel all the time does things which America doesn't want it to do. Okay? Like, this happens all the time. More important things like striking Iran, obviously there were discussions, and obviously they tried to get as much of an agreement with America as possible. But again, their view of the world is either Israel does exactly what America wants, or America is Israel's puppet, right? There is no in between, which
this type of illusion that the Israel is dragging the United States into war.
Yeah,
Like look
all
at
on
what they're
their
doing.
own.
No, they're acting organically with the United States. They are part of the empire, of this empire. Tarek, I want to give just a few comments. My perception of what happened in the past few months and leading to these attacks against Iran. And I would like to hear your thoughts about this, especially about the possible Iranian response against Israel. So, in my opinion, this attack was definitely expected. I was anticipating it when it started in Lebanon, Syria, and then against Iran. This is this cycle of events that were going to unfold sooner or later. And we heard from General Wesley Clark a long time ago on Democracy Now! 7 countries in 5 years, and Iran was at the end of this. The end of the countries that they're going after. Of course, there was a huge resistance against the American project in the region, so this has been delayed several times. But now in 2025, it seems that the big battle is probably going to be unleashed in the region. Now, I also believe that Iran's indecisiveness in the past 1.5 years has led itself into a very difficult situation. Of course,
right? So here's the part where I don't totally disagree with him. Just he looks at it as bad, and I look at it as not totally good, because obviously there was horrible things that happened to get us where we are today, in terms of October 7th, but but yeah, that's it's interesting where his looking at the world fits mine, and where it's completely different, right? So that's what kind of fascinates me about this channel, that it can be completely off base for a while, and then there'll be these moments of clarity where how they look at objective reality can be correct.
Course, for example, I want to give the example of Iran axis, let's say, losing the escalatory dominance in Lebanon and Gaza, losing the deterrence in Lebanon completely, because before October 7 or before the assassinations started in Lebanon in 2024, there was an equation that if you bomb the suburbs of Beirut, we bomb Tel Aviv. So Israel never dared to bomb the suburbs of Beirut. But then series of assassinations started. Hezbollah didn't retaliate because they didn't receive green light from Iran. This is according to several local reports in Lebanon. So they lost the deterrence, they lost their leadership. So
well, they didn't. They tried to retaliate, and this was also right, ignoring the months of Hezbollah bombing of Israel, right? So we took out their leadership. We took out also much of their like ability to react. They reacted with what they did, and sometimes it was like, you know, or because of like the failing command structure, we took out so many commanders.
Lebanon, Hezbollah has been localized, Gaza has been decimated, and then the Israelis, Americans, they dared to come after Syria again, so they did the regime change operation. So the skies of Syria is now completely open to the Israeli fighter jets. They can fly from the Palestinian occupied territories over Syria all the way to the borders with Iraq and strike inside Iran. Then we have the factor of the intelligence and cyber warfare. Israel is definitely has the upper hand over it, and they have shown it several times in, for example, and I'm saying in a monstrous way, right? Not in like giving them all the credit.
Right, in a monstrous way, right? So like where even a second ago, Israel can't do anything without American support. Well, now Israel's doing all of these things because of their capabilities.
Like the lavender program, for example, the gospel program in Gaza Strip, also in Lebanon, using spyware apps to follow the Syrian army movements, for example, and sharing this information with these takfiris in Syria. And then we have what they did now in Iran. It's a impressive operation. They have smuggled assets and also equipment inside Iran, just like the Ukrainians did, and they have struck several sensitive locations. So now we have Iran. What is going to do about it? And in my opinion, both options probably.
So also like here's the thing, like you kind of like sometimes like I wish what he says is true, where he talks about like Israeli capability, because like almost in his mind, like Israel is like capable of like everything. We're also like, you know, we are controlling the West, we're controlling Europe, we're controlling all of that, and even by ourselves, we have all these capabilities. Everything that's happened in the Middle East in the last while has been by design. It's like, you know, it's a conspiracy theory where, like, you know, there's a difference between like making the best of the best situation and like having it all by design. But like sometimes like you would wish it would be true because like who wouldn't want to like have like all of this like control because then everything would be like hunky dory. But you know things aren't so hunky dory, so I think that kind of proves that it's not as shown. Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. That's basically the most of it. And again, interesting channel just in terms of how crazy it is, how completely on the other side, right? It's far more than anything else. Um, and sometimes like it doesn't get to like really deep analysis, which I would like feel like, oh wow, that's insightful, and I agree with it. But sometimes like the basic facts, he would agree with things, but on the other side. Um, so yeah, just wanted to share that with you. Most of it I was watching it for the first time also, and yeah, we are living in trying times. This war with Iran is looking like it'll last a bit, and I hope and pray, and I believe that we will come out on top. I think we have shown that we have the capability to come out on top. Exactly what twists and turns are ahead of us, I do not know. Um, and yeah, in the meantime, going to the safe room with my small children every night. Um, that's that's what it is. And you know, we need to take care of the Iranian threat before they have nuclear weapons. Not like he proposes to wait for them to have the nuclear weapon assembled on the ballistic missile, ready to launch, and only then respond. Because that isn't something that anybody could accept. You see buildings being destroyed in central Israel, and if they were nuclear weapons, it would be the city being destroyed. We are already going to be taking a lot of casualties. Um, but I think the Israeli public are very one-minded in the fact that these casualties pale in comparison with what would come if they were allowed to have a nuclear weapon, and they would actually act upon the threats that they have made since, since the revolution. Not some vague, oh, I don't like this country, so he can't have a nuclear weapon. It is, this country is actively trying to produce a nuclear weapon in order to destroy us. That's what it is, or at least how I perceive it, how Israelis perceive it. I don't think they perceive it that way, or if they do, they agree with it, right? You know, according to them, Israel is a blight upon the planet, and getting rid of it through a nuclear holocaust might really, be a great idea. And yeah, and so those are enemies, and I think it's important because then you can kind of like understand where everyone fits on the scale. Kind of understand the width of the scale to understand how people fit in with it. And that's it. There actually might be a missile strike coming in soon, so I gotta go. Take care. Like and subscribe. I'm available to give web lectures. Contact me at my website, which is listed below. Also do consultancy. You can contact me with the same address. And until next time, take care of yourself wherever you are.